what I want to talk to you about a little bit today is, I think, tell you a story about a personal journey. And the personal journey is my personal journey, and it has to do with becoming an advocate for transportation funding on behalf of my company. And then over the last couple of years, learning so much that I have become an advocate for transportation funding on behalf of the citizens of California and the people in the United States. And that personal journey has led me from probably a self-interest point of view to a much larger vision for what I think we need to do in this country to fund the most vital part of our economy, and that's the opportunity to get stuff and people from where it is to where it needs to go efficiently and ideally in a very environmentally conscious fashion. So this journey started for me in a couple years ago, and I took a call from Dan Hemmick, who is the CEO of Myers Construction. Myers Construction is the company that rebuilds the bridges when there's an earthquake, or when a fuel truck runs into one up in Northern California and does it in a week and a half and gets a lot of public notoriety, and rightly so, from those activities. And he called me, I think, out of frustration. And he said, Bill, he says, Caltrans is in huge trouble. Our industry is in huge trouble. And we need to do something about it. And if we don't do something about it, nobody else is going to do it for us. And the truth was that I could see the handwriting on the wall. I could see the economy beginning to weaken. And I could see, because I knew a little bit about how Caltrans is funded, I could see the end of the Proposition 1B funding. And that Proposition 1B funding will expire probably in the neighborhood of 2013, depending on how quickly those bonds are sold. But there's an end to that. And when that ends, Caltrans is done. They will not have enough money to even begin to take care of the system they have. So I could see that. Obviously made that connection between our business and that funding stream, and got pretty active, frankly, in trying to do something about that with Dan. And we began to learn a lot, number one, as to all the details, very complex system of how transportation is funded in the state of California. We're active at a federal level, but I will tell you that I have not lost hope federally. But I was, again, I think, pretty disappointed with what I heard in the first panel this morning. I don't know how many of you were here, but the subject matter was, for the most part, the transportation bill, federal transportation bill, and how difficult it would be to actually fund what most people know that we need to do. And so I think our focus, my focus, and the Transportation California's focus has been California, because I think there is an opportunity to influence what happens in California in Sacramento, and I'm not sure that's the case, certainly not as easy at the federal level. So this journey led me and Dan to Transportation California, which both companies have been active in for a long time. Jim talked with you about the various funding efforts and successes we've had in the past. And it led me to that organization, which then led us to the Alliance for Jobs. And that's the organization that Jim runs, and it represents labor all through Northern California. I found myself in front of the Governor's Tax Commission talking about the prospect of raising the fuel tax in California to pay for the much needed improvements in our system. We began to put together a PowerPoint presentation and began to take it on the road. Probably done that between Dan and I, we've probably done it 40 times. It's very persuasive, talks about the need. There are huge, huge needs, unmet needs in this state. Caltrans needs $3 billion more than it's currently spending simply to maintain the system that we have. This is a system built in the 1950s, 1960s. Certainly it's been enhanced as time has gone on. But without proper maintenance, it will become less viable, it will decay, it will get older, it will require more. That obligation to maintain that system will continue to grow. $3 billion a year more. To put that into perspective, we burn about, not quite, but let's just say 20 billion gallons of fuel a year. So to get $3 billion, you got to have another 15 cents, simply to maintain the system. It doesn't include the requirements to build capacity. It doesn't include the requirements to make our life better. It doesn't include the requirements to take care of congestion. When you consider all that, and this is not me speaking, this is the Governor's Commission on Transportation, 2005, California needs $16 billion a year more than it's spending to address those needs. Once again, put that in the context of $20 billion a year, and you can see that that's about 85 cents a gallon. Now the federal government is going to do something, okay? They're going to do something, and what they need to do is probably double what they're currently doing. Another 18 cents. That would at least adjust for some inflation since 1990. We've not had an inflationary adjustment in the federal gasoline tax since 1990, and if you think about California, we haven't done it in California either. The other thing that's occurred is we've had fuel efficiency improvements. So as we burn less fuel to go that same mile, we're collecting less and less money per mile to address the needs that we have. But what was very interesting to me in this journey is what I consider to be this very broad constituency that is interested in this subject. It's just not the contractors out there, I can tell you. It's a lot of the folks in this room, all the folks in this room, no doubt, preaching to the choir, probably. But what was interesting to me is this environmental community that is out there that is actively interested in raising the price of fuel for an altogether different purpose. And it became apparent to me because one of the leaders in this effort is a fellow named Fred Keeley. And Fred was a legislator in Sacramento. He was a supervisor in Santa Cruz County. Our headquarters are in Santa Cruz County. I'd known Fred for a long time. And it became apparent to me that he was, in fact, advocating for a fuel price increase to do two things. To reduce demand, probably three things. To reduce demand, change behavior, and clean the air. And it is his belief, and it is belief of most of the think tanks and people that have thought about this and write about it, that the most efficient way to change behavior and encourage fuel efficiency is to raise the price of that product. It's more efficient than cap and trade and all this other stuff that's being discussed. It is green, it is efficient, and it is entirely in alignment with raising money to build the system of the future, transportation system of the future. So we began talking with the environmental community, and it is so interesting to see a contractor-represented group of people, the Transportation California, the Alliance for Jobs, in the same room with environmental groups talking about a way to solve mutual problems. And by the way, this mutual problem includes some transit funding. And in my personal journey, I've come to believe that this is not just a highway problem, it's a transportation problem that needs to be funded in an adequate way to where the pie is big enough to solve this problem universally, or at least attempt to solve this problem universally, as opposed to being so self-interested that nothing gets done. So what we began to do, aside from marching around the state, building a constituency, we talked to the Auto Club, we talked to the California Truckers Association. I had sort of an interesting aside. I had a trucker friend of mine that said, "Bill, you will never get the California Trucking Association to support a fuel price increase. California Truckers Association will support a fuel price increase if," and this is the same concern that the Auto Club has if we can assure them that the money will get used for transportation and won't get stolen. One of the nice things about a fuel the excise tax, it's pretty much locked down. It's going to be really hard to take that money and use it for another purpose. And it's one of the I think one of the more persuasive arguments of a fuel price increase. What's been interesting to me is when I talk to groups, and I won't do this today, but oftentimes I'll talk to a group and I'll say, okay, I want to ask this, I'm going to pick somebody in the audience, and I'll ask them, what's it going to cost you as an average driver per year if we raise the price of fuel, raise the tax on fuel a penny? Give me an answer in 2 seconds. And I force them to answer that question. And the average answer is $200 a year. That's what people think a penny a gallon is worth. $200 a year. And they go nuts because they think the government's going to just break them somehow. But here's the arithmetic. The average driver drives 12,400 miles a year, gets 22.5 miles a gallon, buys 554 gallons of gasoline per year. And every penny is worth $5.54 per year. It's peanuts. It's cheap. Fuel price, the tax on fuel is simple. It is easily administrated. It's cheap. And it needs to go up. And it needs to go up now. We cannot wait for this to happen. Okay, and it is in perfect alignment with a lot of other social issues. The other thing that I tell audiences, and I believe this is true, is this, that if we don't raise the price of fuel in this country, the Arabs will do it for us. As soon as demand comes back and there's an opportunity to take that price up 15 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents a gallon, they'll do it. And they'll do it because they can. And we will have lost the opportunity to harvest some of that money, control demand, and use that money here in this country because it's going across the ocean if we don't act. So in California, what Dan and I, Bert Sandman, and others in Transportation California, but for the most part it's been Dan and me, started marching through Sacramento talking with legislators. And it was incredibly enlightening to me. Because when we would walk into a Democrat's office and we would pitch this, and we've got a pretty good pitch, we would pitch this idea, we'd get about halfway through it, and their arms would go up and they'd say, okay, I get it, you're right, we need to make this investment. Bring us a bill so we can act on it. We walk into the same pitch, we walk into a Republican's office, and I'm a pretty conservative guy, by the way. I walk into a Republican's office, and here's what we get. You're right. I get it. We need to make this investment, but we can't raise taxes, and we got to get the money out of a social program. We can't wait for that. And so we've been spending, quite honestly, a fair amount of time with Democrats in Sacramento trying to craft something that would be acceptable and get it done, because it needs to get done. So in an outline, and maybe just a general outline, what needs to happen is that every year the legislature or some body that they designate needs to assess the revenue stream that we have for transportation in this state with a needs assessment, a current needs assessment. And you're not going to raise the price of fuel a buck. I get that. But if we incrementally address this issue every year, over time, you can raise the price of fuel to meet the needs that we have.